Hi everybody, Claudia here from Create with Claudia, and today I'm going to show you an ultimate scrap busting block. And this is the block here, and I'll show you that better in a second, but this is a quilt I made out of it. I made this about 12 years ago. And as you can imagine, when you quilt for over 30 years, you have a ton of scraps. I mean, heck, you make one quilt, you have a lot of scraps left over, and if you make multiples, well, you know what I'm talking about. And this was just a fun block I came up with to show off those scraps and get rid of them. Actually, it was a challenge for me. What I did is I had this box of scraps, and I said I'm going to make a quilt only out of those. I'm not going to use any new fabric. I'm not going to buy any new fabric, and I'm going to try not to cut any of them from my shelf stash. This was all just from scraps left over from other projects, or maybe I'd gotten some charms from somebody or something like that. And that's actually a good use for charms too, is this block. But you can sort of see it here. I don't have any paper or anything, but you can see here's the block out here, this coral one. And that's the block we're going to be making today. It's kind of magical because you're going to get a sash. It looks like we have sashing in it when it really you don't have the sashing. And then you have these nice little corners, which sort of give you that little jewel look, a little twinkle. That's a little twinkle to the quilt, I think, to the top, because you're using darks and lights. And that's the other really nice thing about this project. And this block is it's a real challenge and a lesson on quilt color value, which has honestly always been a struggle for me. And I've gotten a lot better in it over the years, but when I first started, man, everything was the same, because I tend to gravitate, I think like most people, to these medium fabrics. So it challenges me in that way because I can pull out darks and lights and mediums. So here's the finished block. In my ultimate scrap buster block, you can see I use darks here and darks here, as dark as I could find, lights here for the sashing or for that smaller, more narrow block, and then lights for these corners. Excuse me. So let's get started. This is when you're done with the block, it should measure 9.5 inches square. Fingers crossed that always does. You never know. I have my moments, and I'm going to show you how to sew one, and let's hope that it's right. So again, you're going to need mediums, darks, and light different values, and I try to keep them all in the same family. So like this one's brown. You saw in the quilt there's orange, coral, pink, whatever color you want. You could do this all in one color wave. If you wanted a whole quilt in greens or blues, that would be pretty too. Okay, I'm going to put that aside. So here's what you're going to need. You're going to need 4 squares of medium blue, or mediums. Again, I'm using blue for demonstration purposes. Okay, and I like to set mine apart because you're going to put that sashing in there. Okay, there we go. And I set mine diagonally across from each other. These do not have to be the same. You could use all the same. It's completely up to you. I just found that when I had a bigger piece of a scrap, it was just easy for me to use 2 of the same. Although there are many blocks in that quilt that I ran out of maybe one of these blues and I threw in another one. Just as long as they're fairly similar in value. All right, and then you need, so these are cut 4-inch squares, and you need 4 of those. 4-inch square, 4 4-inch squares. Then you're gonna need this thinner sash, square, actually it's a rectangle, and you're going to cut 4 of these 2.5 inches by 4 inches. So 2.5 inches by 4 inches, these are cut. And again, I tried to use, if I had enough, 2 and 2. If I didn't, no big deal. These light fabrics this is where you keep those whites and those blacks, because those are really good for this quilt block, for getting your lights and darks. All right, and then for the center block, you want dark, and it is a 2.5-inch square. And there you go. That's a navy. Oh, I love that fabric. But that really pops in there in the center, that dark center. And then you're going to need to work on the corners. You're going to need 4 2-inch squares. 2 are light, so 2 2-inch squares of the light. And they go in the top left and the bottom left, and you can see here where I'm using different ones, but you don't really notice they're not right next to each other, and it gives the block that scrappy look. And then for this one, I had this fun black, and these are 2 2-inch squares in the darks, and they will go here. and then I'm going to show you how to make those diagonal corners. Okay, so that's basically how it's going to be laid out, and I'm going to try to keep it that way as best as I can. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to make those corners. That's like a snowball corner. If you've ever seen a snowball quilt or a snowball block, it takes just a little bit of the corner. So you're going to need a marking tool. I'm just going to use a pencil and a small ruler, and you're going to draw a line diagonally on the back side of the square, of the small square, of the 2-inch square, from corner to corner. Now, if you're really good and you're experienced, you can just eyeball it and just sew down the corner. So hopefully you can see that. There you see that diagonal line I've drawn. You're going to sew along that line after you line it up on the corner here. So you're going to line up the 2 squares. You got the larger square and the small one, and you can see how I've lined that up. All the edges are even, and you're going to sew down that line that you've drawn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and then I'm going to repeat with the next 4, and that'll be done. Okay, so I've sewn these. You can see I chain pieced them. I'm just going to snip those apart, get rid of those threads. One thing I forgot to mention, or I don't remember if I mentioned or not, when I first started sewing these corners on, is when you put them on the squares together, you want the right sides of the fabric facing each other. So here you can see, there's your design. It's facing the other design, because basically you're going to cut away some of that and you're going to fold it. We're going to press that over. So once you have these sewn, make sure I have the right corners. You're going to trim away that extra corner there. Okay, and I'll do that here. So you've sewn the squares together, right sides facing each other. You've sewn down the line, and now you're going to cut away this extra fabric here. And you can save that or you can toss it. That's up to you. It's going to be really small, but some people like to make those mini quilts. And you're going to leave about 1/4 inch of fabric. And you can use a rotary cutter, or I'm just going to use my scissors so that you have it like so. And then you're going to press that back. And I just took that over to my pressing table, and there you go. You can see it doesn't line up quite perfectly. That will get fixed when we square up the block. So there's one, and let me go ahead and do the rest for you. All right, now the block is ready to piece together. So you see you have the 2 light corners. You can really see how it's starting to come together. Now I sew my blocks together like so. You can see this is almost like a 9 patch. You have nine separate pieces in the block, and I'm just going to go across and do row 1. This is considered row 1, row 2, row 3, and I sew my blocks together in rows. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do the first one, and then I'll piece the best together. So you're going to take your first 2 sections, and I like to lay mine out so I keep in order. It's just how I do it. Line up those pieces, the strip, the sashing strip, I call it the sashing strip, it's that lighter strip, to the inside of the square with the triangle on it. And again, I will chain piece these together, but I'm going to show you this one first. Always use your 1/4 inch. Heard that. Always use that 1/4 inch, that scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's quilters should do. And a little thread got caught in there. So there you go. There's your row 1. and you're going to press that. And for purposes of this block, I'm going to press to the darker fabric always. Okay? Well, except for the corners. For these two corners, I will always press to the dark side. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll repeat for the rest, and I will show you how to do them. Okay. Where did I put my scissors? Here we go. I like to trim those threads off as I go because if you don't, they get stuck and caught in your seams. All right, so now it's coming together, and then the next sewing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna attach this square to this so I can finish up row 1. But let me go ahead and press, and then I will go ahead and sew. Okay, so there you can say chain piece them, and I'm going to press these open for you so you see how they come, how they turn out. All right, and now you're ready to sew the rows together. And here's where I do have some pins, so that helps me with this, and that's where the pressing comes in handy because you're going to nest those seams together. And I don't know if you know what nesting means, but they're going to sort of butt up against each other. So I'm going to show you on this one. That way you have those nice crisp points. All right, so see how you want that to just, hopefully you can see that okay. They nest right into each other. Since there's a little bit of a bump there from where you pressed, because of the way you pressed, they nest in together and they should fit right together. And I put a pin right next to that sewing line. And there, you can sort of feel it, like if you put it together, sometimes you can feel there's a big lump, and then when you sort of fiddle around with it, it gets smoother, and that means that they've nested together. It's a trick I learned a long time ago, and it helps a lot. All right, I'm going to line up there. Some people will pin at the ends. I don't like to do that, but I know a lot of people do. And luckily you can see where the fabric lines up. So far so good with the measurements and the sewing, but you want all that fabric lined up, and this is again right sides together. I don't say that enough, and I probably should, or maybe I say it too much, but all right, we're going to sew along that line, along that seam, excuse me, along that side. Watch when you sew over pins so you don't break your sewing needle. And you're still with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right. So here you can see if I did it right. Yep, nice crisp points right there. Nice joiners there. I like that. That looks good to me. So we're going to press that open. We're going to add the next side. So here you have and then we're going to add this to this. All right, if everything goes well, we're going to square it off now. We're going to, I didn't cut those threads off. Cut those off really quickly. I'm going to press it open. All right, there you have it, my ultimate scrap buster block. Now, I am going to square it off, like I said, and I will show you how to do that. I have this I love this. Is one of my favorite rulers. It's a 15 by 15, I think. Yep. Has a nice diagonal line, and that really helps when you're squaring up blocks. This should be measuring 9.5 by 9.5 square. And if all was right, when it looks like it is, it might be a little bit big. We're gonna try and square that up. It might need a little squaring up. You're gonna measure corner. That's where that diagonal line comes in handy. Let's see. All right, looking good. Just gonna trim it up a little bit. Let's see. It's kind of hard to do when you're sitting down, but I didn't see. You can see there's a little bit of an overhang there. Nuts. Okay, but that's okay. That's why you do this, and that's why. I mean, it's pretty close, but we'll just clean it up a little bit because you don't want it. It'll be easier to sew down the line when you're adding it. So you take your rotary cutter, watch your fingers, cut across the top. It barely needed any on the bottom. All right, and here we go. Square it up on this side, and this is where you line up your 9.5 inch, 9.5 inch. Get those corners. And it's looking pretty good. It's a little bit off, but you know how it goes. I mean, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Whoops. All right. So there you have it. There is your 9-inch ultimate scrap busting block to put into a quilt, wall hanging, whatever you want to do. Great project, great looking block. Here you can see where when you put them together, you definitely want to put that dark and the light together. See how those corners sort of play off each other. But when you see it in the big picture, seamlessly, it looks like, oh, this quilt weighs a ton. There you can see it. There's a green one, there's a purple one, and you can see that sort of faux sashing there, and then those little twinkles in the corners. And there you have it. There is your ultimate scrap busting block. I hope you give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and I would love to see your results if you do it on Instagram or on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm at Create with Claudia, and post your pictures with that hashtag. I'd love to see your blocks if you give it a try. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.